everybody, welcome to Vlogmas Day 18. It's Wednesday the 18th of December, which means it's 1 week until Christmas. I don't want to stress you all out, but yeah, it's really approaching fast now. So I'm in work today for my last day of work until after Christmas, which is a really nice feeling because it'd be nice just to be able to concentrate on getting all the house things done, just get some food, some baking and stuff like that done, and get some crafting done as well, which would be really nice. So I'm gonna get this morning out of the way. I've got some chores to do this afternoon, so I will see you back later. Welcome to the question and answer session that I said I was going to record for Vlogmas. Lots of you sent in some questions that you'd like me to answer, and thank you for that. It was really nice to hear from so many of you. I've made a note, so I'll look over at my notes from time to time, and I've got a few things to show you in relation to the questions. I've got a nice hot cup of tea, and I've even got my Christmas top on today. It was the last day that I went into work, so I thought I'd put my jingle bell top on. So I'm feeling actually quite festive. So I'll kick off the questions and answers. The first question was from Sam on Instagram, and Sam asked me, do I have a Make 9 for 2020 planned? Any dream knitting or sewing plans? And the easiest way to answer that is, at the moment, no, I'm not particularly planning to do a Make 9 for next year. I did do one for this year and it didn't really pan out. I did a few of the things, swapped quite a few things around, and it was a very loose sort of guideline, and I don't think I'm going to bother with that next year. Dream knitting, I've got a few things in my Ravelry queue that I really want to do that I've already got yarn for. I've got the Lydia sweater, which is the K Facet heavily colourworked sweater that I shared on the podcast a little while ago. I want to knit a ranunculus. I've got some yarn for that as well. Lots of things on my Ravelry queue that I'd really like to get done. And sewing, again, there's lots of things that I would like to get done in 2020 that I didn't get done this year. I've got a plan really to use the existing fabric and yarn that I've got. Don't we always say that? But I really want to get them done. I've got my earnest face on now. I really want to get things done that I haven't achieved this year. I want to get to grips with my overlocker. Justin bought me an overlocker. Was it this year or was it the year before? I can't remember. And I've used it once, and it's really naughty because it sits on the shelf. That reminds me, I must do a little craft room tour when everything's all super tidy. I'll show you around my little room where everything is. But yeah, the overlocker sat on the shelf being unloved. I've got some nice patterns, some Tilly and the Buttons patterns, a Merchant and Mills patterns, and I've got the fabric. I've got some nice linens and jerseys and things like that. So I'd like to do a little bit more dressmaking. Yeah, so I hope that answers your question, Sam. I don't have a rigid sort of plan, but I do hope to use up a lot of the fabric and yarn that I've been stashing away in 2019. The next question is from Ali. I used to do a lot of scrapbooking and went to the go-go retreats, and Ali was always there, so it was really nice to hear from Ali. Hope you're well. And Ali asked, do I still crochet? Because I used to dabble in a bit of crochet back in my scrapbooking days, and crochet was kind of my gateway drug, if you like, back into knitting properly. I hadn't done any knitting for years and years, and sort of started doing a bit of crochet, so she remembers seeing me doing that back at the scrapbooking retreats. And the answer to the question, Ali, is I would like to still crochet, but crochet doesn't really like me. It makes my hands, I get a lot of sort of cramp in my fingers and my wrists, and the action of crocheting doesn't really suit me at the moment, so it's kind of on a bit of a hiatus. What I was crocheting, and regular viewers of the podcast will know this, is my granny stripe. It's been popped in this little bag, while I decide what to do, I was going to try and make it into something else. And this is the crochet granny stripe blanket from the Attic 24 blog. And as you can see, I've done it sort of like double bed width. So it's quite wide, not very deep at the moment. So I really enjoyed the process and choosing the yarns. And I really liked the way it was coming out, but it was really causing me a lot of problem with my hands, so I sort of put it to one side and it's just stayed there. I mean, I could pick this up again, maybe because I haven't crocheted for such a long time, it won't cause me so much pain in my wrists and hands and whatever. Yeah, so that's something that I'd like to pick up again, because it's such a shame, and it was a really good way of using up stash, all those minis and bits of yarn that left over from other projects. So that was my my granny stripe blanket. While I was looking for that, I found a couple of really old crochet projects that I thought might be of interest. One is this, and I forgot how pretty this is. This is a sort of a throw shawly type thing. Don't know what to call it. Again, I got this, this is a shameless copy of one from the Attic 24 blog. And this is actually crocheted in some beautiful alpaca and silk, I think it is, which was Debbie Bliss yarn that is not made anymore. I crocheted this absolutely years ago, and you can see it's quite long, and it would actually work sort of just as a, you know, over your coat or jacket, just as a, you know, like a scarfy sort of shawl thing. But the colours are really pretty, and it's quite heavy because it's in alpaca. And when I crocheted this and finished it, I had no sort of concept of blocking in the way that we block our knitting, sort of wet blocking. Excuse me. So I just sort of pinned it out on the floor and sprayed it with a water bottle, and then when I unpinned it, it hadn't really made an awful lot of difference to sort of the edges of the flowers. The ones that are inside, obviously that are joined, had all sort of been blocked out by the fact they were joined to the next one, but the edges are a bit curly. So I think that might be a little project to actually get this soaked, wet blocked and pinned out properly. And I think it actually would be quite nice. I think it would look really nice with a denim jacket over the top. I think it would go really, really nice with that. And it's a shame not to use it. It's just sort of folded up in the wardrobe. So that's a really old blast from the past crochet project. And about the same time as doing that, perhaps a little bit after, I embarked on my biggest crochet project ever, which is this big bed, oh, dropped it, got my ring caught in it, a big bed throw. And this is really heavy and really huge. I'm going to attempt to give you some sort of idea. So it's just big granny squares, huge big granny squares. And I just made, well, I didn't make up, I googled some ideas for borders, and I just put a board, just joined all the I did like a join as you go method on the squares, and just did a border around the edge when I thought it was big enough. My corners weren't great, the way I've done the corner. This is really hard trying to hold it. The corners weren't great the way I sort of went round. It was a bit of guesswork. I'm not a brilliant crocheter. But again, I mean, this is really heavy. It's knitted, crocheted from King Cole, I think it's cotton and bamboo blend, but it is huge. I mean, this covers a double bed and then some. It's absolutely massive. This is folded over, and it's a shame because again, this is just folded up in the wardrobe. So I need really to decide what I'm going to do with it. I should just put it on the bed really, I guess. But yeah, so crochet has been something that I've really enjoyed doing, and definitely something that I wouldn't rule out doing again. But so thanks for your question, Ali. Pop that over there to one side. The next question, I'll just scooch back a little bit. The next question is from Marilisa, and she asked me, what is my favourite thing to knit? My favourite thing to knit changes all the time. Sometimes if I'm in a sock phase, it's socks. If it's shawls that I'm into at the time, it's shawls. So I'm a bit fickle in the things that I, you know, in what's my favourite. But I think if I had to really be pinned down, I would say sweaters. Really like knitting sweaters, and particularly colourwork sweaters, because I find them, you know, they really engage you a bit more. I like the whole process of choosing the yarns and following the charts and just seeing how your work grows and how it changes when you block it at the end. So the answer to that, Marilisa, is colourwork sweaters would be my favourite thing to knit. The next question was from lovely Dorte, and she asked, do I knit every day? And the answer to that is yes, I absolutely do knit every day. If I don't knit every day, I really feel out of sorts. I have to, even if it's just a couple of rows or even a row, I have to knit every day. I think I could probably count on one hand the days I haven't knitted in the past 4 years. I've definitely knit, you know, almost every day. It's only been days where if I've been really poorly, like if I've been in hospital or something like that, that I haven't knitted. But so yeah, I think knitting is, it becomes part of your life, doesn't it? And I think I'm one of those people that if I'm sitting down, like at the moment I'm sitting here like doing this with my hands, because normally if I'm sitting down I'm knitting or sewing or doing something. So the fact that, you know, if I didn't have knitting, I don't know what I would do. So it's a really brilliant question. Thank you, Dorte. Lovely Shirley asked me about my Boho Blush shawl, particularly about the fringing and the blocking. So I've got my Boho Blush shawl here. It's a fairly recent finished object that you would have seen that I've shared on the podcast before. It's a pattern by Andrea Mowry, if you're not familiar with it. The pattern's available on Ravelry, and it's basically a shawl with garter stitch, a little sections of brioche and the feather and fan lace pattern, and then it just repeats garter, brioche, feather and fan, and so on. And I knitted this in a gradient set of yarns from Pixie Yarn from Sophie, and that was this whole section from the top here all the way down. And then when I got to the darkest one, I knew I would need a lot more yarn, so I mixed in some Mr. B's yarn in the, I can't remember the colourway name. It's all on the Ravelry page, Ravelry project page for Boho Blush. And of course the real feature of this particular shawl is the fringing. So I don't know if you can see the fringing on there. It goes all the way along, right from the tip, so it's quite a lot of it. And hence why you need to have quite a lot. If you're doing it all in one colour, I think she suggests that you need 3 skeins for this project. And if you're doing it as I have in a gradient or whatever, just make sure you have plenty of yarn for your fringing at the end. She's very, very clear in the pattern. Andrea Mowry's patterns, if you've not knitted one of hers before, they are particularly good. She's very, very clear in the way that she describes everything and all the steps, and she tells you exactly how many, how evenly you have to space the fringing out, how many pieces of yarn you have to cut, and how long you have to cut them. So I decided, Shirley, to block the shawl first, so I knew exactly how much edging I was going to have to put fringing on. So I blocked it all out, and then when it was completely dry, I sat and cut all the yarn out. I think I did end up having to cut a few more strands than Andrea Mowry suggested. So you really do need to make sure you've got plenty of yarn. And then each little section I just threaded through. Now I don't know if you're going to be able to see clearly enough. I just threaded them through to the halfway point. So each of these is made of 2 long pieces of yarn. Just threaded them through to the middle point and then just tied them in a double knot at the top here. So it's really, really simple to do, but it's a bit repetitive. So you have to have, I laid this out on the desk and just kept moving it along so that they were evenly spaced, just measuring as I went, each sort of inch I think it is, and just popping the fringing on until it was all done. But it really does make the shawl. I don't think it would look quite as pretty as it does without it. Now obviously I did put that on after it was blocked, and I don't know how it will behave if it's washed and blocked again with the fringing on. I mean, it's superwash yarn, so it should be okay. It shouldn't felt or anything, but it might get a bit tangly, but I'll deal with that when the time comes. But thank you for your question, Shirley. That was a good question. Let's just fold up this Boho Blush. I need to whiz through the other questions because I don't want to make this into a podcast because it's supposed to be a Vlogmas. The next question is from Nancy. Nancy asked, what is my most worn knitted item? And without a shadow of a doubt, my most worn knitted item is my Marley shawl, which is this one here, which you've all seen before if you watch my podcast. It's another pattern by Andrea Mowry. It was my first brioche project. Absolutely loved knitting it, and I've worn it and worn it and worn it. It's so warm. It's just seems to drape just right. It just seems to look really, really nice whenever I wear it, and I often get comments on it. I have worn it so much that it's got quite a few, I noticed last time I wore it, it's got quite a few little sort of pulls that I've tried to, yeah, it's got caught a few times. I think it got caught on my earrings when I had it sort of like quite up high. But it's really easy to wear. It's a triangle shape. I just put it on like this and bring it round. And you can see the way the brioche sits with minimal fussing, it just seems to lay right. So that's definitely my most worn knitted item. Thank you, Nancy. I better take this off because I'm going to get roasting, aren't I? The final question is from lovely Kelly of Lay Family Yarn, and it's a two-part question. The first part, Kelly asks, how did my love of craft start? I'll give you the abridged version because I don't want to just waffle on forever. Essentially, as a child really, my mum isn't particularly crafty, but my nan always knitted and sewed. I mean, she was a seamstress by profession, so I'm guessing it probably came from my nan, from my nanny Alice, seeing her doing all those sorts of things when I was a child. It was a neighbour, a next door neighbour of ours, that taught me to knit when I was a very little girl. And then my dad was just brilliant at everything basically, and he was always encouraging, and he would help me out with things. I can remember being in my late teens and wanting to sew I think it was some shorts and trousers and things, so I was going away on holiday. And yeah, I can remember Dad cutting out the pattern with me, and because he was just really able to turn his hand to anything. So yeah, the crafty gene was always there on both sides. And yeah, I was that child that just wanted to make everything, be it sticking things together or trying to knit or sew or anything like that. So yeah, that's how my love of craft started, Kelly, just from seeing people in the family doing stuff. And I think sometimes it's almost like it's just in you, even if you don't have that influence from people close to you. I think sometimes I think if you're a maker, you are a maker, and you just have that urge to create things. So that was a really good question. Thank you. And the second part of Kelly's question was, can we meet up again in 2020? And that is a definite big yes. I would love to meet up and come to Lay Family Yarn HQ again in 2020. So I'm going to finish my cup of tea, and I'll pop back a little bit later on with my advent for today. But thank you all for the questions, and I hope you enjoyed hearing my answers.